We want to welcome everybody to our second episode of the GM Show with your hosts, Brian Green and Henry Metcalf. We're super stoked today to be able to interview a good friend of ours and just an amazing human, an amazing father. And he happens to be super successful in the insurance world. And we're just thrilled to have Tanner Eldredge here with us to talk about just what he's learned in life and how you can be successful in sales and in real estate. So Tanner, thank you so much for being on our podcast today, man. How's your Friday afternoon going?
Going great. So pumped to be with BG and Big Hank, Can't think of a better way to spend a Friday afternoon.
Dude, I could think of a number of better ways to spend a Friday afternoon, but you're nice to hop on.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. How are you
thanks,
guys?
man. We're doing great. We're doing awesome. So to give our listeners maybe a little context. So I know you and Henry, you guys grew up in the same neighborhood, right? And then you and I had an opportunity to study at Utah State together before you went on your mission. And I think one of the questions that we want to kind of kick off with was, you sounds like you studied for a year at Utah State, you went on a mission. It looks like you came back and went to UVU. When you were studying in college, like what what did you study and did you always have a goal and aspirations to get in the insurance world? And would you mind just maybe sharing your story on how you got into the seat and that you're in now?
Yeah, so I went to Utah State where we met, and I'm going to tell a story about BG. Oh, I'm going to sneak that in about how good a guy he is. But um, went on my mission, went to Missouri, Kansas. My mission president was in the insurance business. He owned his own agency. My last day on the mission, he said, "Hey, have you ever looked into insurance? Do you know what you want to do when you get home?" I had asked him a little bit about his business and his career. He said, "No, I don't know a thing about it." But I knew that it was something that was interesting to me based on how he talked about it and what I knew about his business. So I came home and interviewed a few people in the business uh, on different sides of the business. Realized that I wanted to do it and I wanted to get in as soon as possible before all my peers would get into it, in their late 20s and early 30s. And so 21, couple months home, got right in. And it was funny, the firm that ended up hiring me was my mission president's prior company he owned with my former employer. They split up. So kind of a small world there, but that's how I ended up getting into it. And then I went to UVU because I was going to go to Utah. But I was working full time from that point on. UVU was the only night classes that I could get in at. So that's kind of how that all happened.
Dude, that's awesome. I'm just curious, like what was it about the insurance industry that like got you so fired up? Because you could look at that particular industry and sales is fun, but it's not as sexy as maybe something else that you could sell, and you're an awesome salesman. So like, what was it that attracted you to insurance when you got back from your mission?
Yeah, I was joking with you guys before. This will be your least watched. Like, no one wants to listen to an insurance broker on podcasts. So, but no, I came home and I wanted to get into real estate. My dad was a developer, but I didn't have a mentor. And you guys know how important it is to have like a good mentor in the development or real estate space. And so I started when I figured out insurance, I looked at other industries that were similar to it, and it really came down to financial advising and insurance because I wanted something that was residual. I wanted something that there was no cap on your income. You were your own boss. Um, you made as much as you wanted depending on how good you were. And so it really aligned. And then it ended up I didn't really want to be dealing with people's money. So I dove into insurance, had some great mentors in the business. My cousin was in insurance who ended up getting me my first job. And then I gravitated to selling towards real estate developers because my dad was in real estate. A lot of my friends were getting their MREDs or getting into real estate. So had a connection there and I wanted to get into real estate. Just didn't really it felt like it wasn't my best path. So ended up working out great. I love what I do. As boring as people it is, it's working with developers. I feel like I'm a extension of their company. So seeing the ins and outs of the different development firms here and really throughout the country is fascinating to me. Fun to see their projects, ensuring their new acquisitions or new projects. So that's why insurance, and then that's kind of how I fell into the development real estate sector within insurance.
Well, and we have to give Tanner a shout out because I mean we've got an active project that we're working on right now, getting insurance quotes from a handful of people, interviewing a bunch of people, um, and all the quotes are coming back. We're like, suck. This is not what we were thinking we were going to get quoted on, right? We're a smaller group who doesn't have a blanket policy that is at scale, and we're competing with some of these other groups that do. But then Tanner comes through clutch, of course, and he hooks it up with like the best rate that we could get. I don't know what you did to get that for us, but
Okay, we
um,
got lucky. Yeah.
hard work. I think what's something that's really interesting that you said, um, getting right into it early, right? I think I've seen that in my career a little bit, but um, have you found a lot of people are getting into it like, hey, I'm in college, I'm getting into insurance, or they kind of have a short career maybe in something else and they're like, hey, I'm going to pivot into insurance for whatever reason. You taking that approach right from the get-go, how do you think that set you apart compared to like your peers and where they're at now if they got in later?
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but my thought process, for whatever it's worth, was if I'm going to get my teeth knocked in, I'd rather do it when I'm young, earn my stripes young, way before my peers are going to have to go through these difficult times. And then insurance, it's a hard business because it's a long-term business for the most part. There's a lot of learning curves early, like really any career, but especially with insurance because, it's a relationship business. A lot of people stay with their broker for 20, 30 years sometimes. And so I thought I'd have a massive leg up if I got in at 21 versus 25 to 30 and straight into production. A lot of people go on the service side, then they go into production, but I went straight into production. As I said, I might as well start building my book now. And I don't have kids. I'm not married. And eventually got married a few years later and had kids a few years after that. But it set me up because by the time most of my peers that were getting into this business were, late 20s, early 30s, I had already established a book of business, a reputation, had a good clientele, and had a knowledge base when they're just starting. Now, I'm sure there's advantages of starting later. You have more of a network, you know more, you went to school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, it worked out great because I had just zoned in on this just insurance for 5, 6, 7, 8 years before a lot of them were even getting into the business.
That's sweet. We were talking just earlier, like we look at your LinkedIn and we see the term producer, right? You just think like this is the dude who pulls up to the table and he's just getting stuff done. Walk us through a little bit of like the day in the life of producer. Like, what does that look like? 'Cause you mentioned there's a couple other sides of how people could get into it, like whether it's the service side versus what you're doing. Right now, you're dressed really nice. You look good.
Thank
Um,
you.
what's your day in the life look like?
Hey, with an ugly face like this, I got to dress a little bit
Hey,
nice, right?
a story about
Yeah,
Tanner
right.
really quick though. Tanner, right before his mission, do you remember this? They're playing a
Watermelon football.
game of watermelon football in the
Oh
fourth.
yeah, I remember.
Tanner takes a elbow straight to the face and
Yeah.
goes and has the most cut up lip ever going right before pushing on his farewell
Yeah.
talk. And oh man,
Awesome.
it was funny. So
Big Mike, Henry's dad sewed me up on the kitchen counter. He
No.
stitched me up like 18 stitches in my lip. I gave my farewell talk with this massive, huge lip.
you don't
Yeah, it
have
was
the ugly
gnarly.
face now. You may have had it back
That was
then,
funny.
dude. Not an
It was a
ugly
good
face.
memory. Yeah, that was fun. Sorry, what was the question? Day in the
Yeah,
life of
day
a
in the
producer?
life for you.
Um, there's really two parts of the business: the servicing aspect, as far as the current clientele and how to continue to drive strategy and service for them, and then new production, working on prospects and new opportunities. I would say most split up. Probably we have a really good team here at Lockton. So 70% of my time's working on new opportunities, and 30% of my time is probably spent on current clients, things like that. And the reason that is we have a super specialized real estate team here at Lockton that are quite frankly smarter than I am regarding the policies and structure and strategy. And so once a client comes on, the team takes really good care of them, which you guys have probably seen.
Yeah. You guys have been awesome. I think something that you mentioned that I'm learning as I'm getting into real estate is it really is all about relationships. And whether you're trying to acquire land or get permits for development or raise money for your next project. And I'm curious, Tanner, as a 21-year-old, a 22, 23, how did you kind of take that strategy and build your book of business and kind of put yourself in a position to really get that residual income and really service your clients? Like what can our listeners learn from your strategy on how to build those relationships and ultimately close deals?
Yeah, I took, at 21 years old, it was really hard because the people I was selling to are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 99% of the time. And so, and I look young, and I didn't even hardly have any facial hair back then. So they thought I was 16 a lot of the times. But, understanding that the relationship was long term and taking the long term approach has worked, building a brand so that people within the real estate community locally know that that's what I focus on. And that takes a lot of time. But then also, when engaging with them, giving them some sort of value rather than just asking for business or this, that, the other, giving them something back in return is how I've always tried to do it. Give before I take, whether that's introduce them to some family offices or other equity partners, or add value in other ways rather than just, hey, let's do business. Is the approach I've tried to take.
That's cool. I'm just out of curiosity, like when you look back on your career, is there a real estate group or an entity where you were really hoping to win their business? And do you mind sharing like an example of how you were able to add value and what was it like in like winning their business? And and I don't
Yeah,
know, is there like a big dog that you closed or just
yeah.
maybe your since starting, like what's been and you don't have to obviously say the name of the company, but what was it that you did to close that particular big deal?
Yeah, I'll say the name because they're all my good friends now. But the Gardner Group here locally, one of the flagship accounts in the state, the founding fathers of development real estate here. Had a buddy, one of my really good friends, that got a job there, worked there, so I had somewhat of an in there. He was not high on the totem pole, so had no decision making. But Mark Murdoch is a legend in real estate here locally. His daughter and son were on the golf team, and Mark doesn't golf a lot. He golfs more now, but at the time he didn't. And so Ben offered my services of said I was a golf, which is not true. Said I was a golf coach. So I actually helped coach the East women's girls team and the junior varsity golf team. So I developed a relationship with Mark, going and taking a couple hours out of my week, and he paid me, actually, if we're being fair. He was very nice, but trying to build a relationship with Mark, which led to a relationship with their chief legal, which led to a relationship with the CFO, and eventually, 7 years later, earning their business. So it was a super, super long term because they're very relationship based as well. But getting that trust with Mark, getting that trust with their chief legal, Matt Wynn, long term through relationships is a great story of kind of the example you're looking for. So shout out to Gardner, Ben, Mark, Maddie, all those guys there. They're awesome.
Shout out to the golf course too, right?
Shout out to East High Golf. Shout out to East High Golf. Yeah.
There you go, dude.
And
Oh,
Bonneville,
man.
the practices were at Bonneville. So shout out Bonneville.
Brian's learning that deals are won and lost on the golf course, man.
That's right.
That's
That,
crazy, man.
Hey,
that's like,
we gotta bring the deals to the hockey rink.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
You
know
would
if
close a lot there.
yeah, yeah, maybe. Like that's that's crazy. So what you're saying is that process from reaching out to your friend that's at Gardner and then getting an opportunity to coach, that took a total of 7 years
Yeah,
to
probably. Yeah.
really close their business.
Yeah, about 20, we got the business, I think, in 23, and we met Mark probably in 2016, 2017. Yeah,
thing we
five,
deal with
six
a
years.
lot. One thing we deal with a
Crazy.
lot, I'm really interested in how you manage relationships that are that long term, that take so long to come to fruition, right? One thing we struggle with, we've got a book of brokers that we work with regularly who are trying to bring us deals. And I'm sure they're sending, hey, here's the first look at the deals, and they're sending it to 40 other people who get.
You're the first one to look at it. Yeah.
But shout out, we have a lot of good brokers, so I'm not
Yeah.
dogging on them because
Yeah.
they're awesome and they get us a lot of good deals. But managing relationships is something like I personally struggle with, knowing I've got 150 people probably in my phone that have my number saved that I might not have their number saved, and something that's such a long sales cycle for you. How do you go about kind of managing all those relationships, knowing like who to reach out to when, et cetera, if your sales cycle is so long?
Yeah, mine's a little different than your guys's. Your guys might be the same as mine when you're trying to raise equity and get your capital stack finalized. But from my side of the business with, trying to build that trust and relationship with prospects, and I'm sure I've been a lot overbearing like any other sales guy at times, but trying to make it as authentic as possible, meeting them and dealing with them in an organic way, less transactional. And that doesn't mean, you're going to dinner with their wife, but inviting them to events that add value to them. And then you get to meet them there where it's giving value to their business, rather than just, do you want to go to a jazz game, which I think is great, but developing a relationship with them where they get something out of it. Not just me taking their time so I can get the business, which again, there's a lot that has to happen, right? Like a part of whether it's raising equity, I'm sure, or brokers calling you, like business has to get done, but trying to add value, like I mentioned earlier, in an organic way.
Yeah, and like I guess my question really is, how are you keeping track of everyone, right? Like
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
got probably how many people you work with and how many people you're hopefully wanting to work with in the future. It's got to be
Yeah.
hundreds, if not 1,000 people almost, right? So how do you keep track of everyone?
Yeah. I have a cadence that I follow for all my clients, and my a process that I follow for current customers and prospects, whether it's, we go golfing once a year. I know they like to do this, so we do that. They like to do that, so we do that. And I just have a cadence I follow for every single prospect and client. But it's hard, there's a lot of people, like you mentioned, that you're getting hit up by brokers every other day. So you guys are probably in a harder position than I am of when you should, is it a waste of your time to talk to them all the time? Which relationship do you want to nurture versus not? So, but for me, it's just finding that balance of not being overbearing, but also letting them know that I'm here if they need anything.
Yeah, that's cool.
And dude, I just want to shout you out. You've done an awesome job, selling into our company and as a smaller sponsor group. And I just loved your sales approach. It was awesome. And I think one question that we have is for our listeners that either want to change brokers in their insurance world or are actively searching like we were. What how can they leverage you to like get the most value in what they're trying to accomplish in their business? Like how, you said you're an extended arm to all these groups. How should they kind of approach you and to give you an opportunity to like add that value and ultimately become a partnership?
Yeah, I think that really the most value we can bring, specifically for the groups that aren't already institutional sized groups. Because institutional sized groups will have a full-time risk manager that knows A to Z everything on insurance and risk, and that's a totally different relationship. But a lot of the, larger to more boutique style groups, we understand how the institutional firms run their insurance and risk management. And they're obviously that size for a reason and are very effective with how they manage risk, purchase insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And so taking that model and plugging it into a boutique style real estate firm, and using that process so that you don't have to stub your toe along the way is really where we add the most value. Because we work both with the large institutional and then the more boutique style, we can show you the process of how the big boys do it and efficiencies that can help reduce price, administrative burden, you name it, and manage your risk better without you having to learn it the hard way, through hard lessons learned on doing something wrong with your risk management and insurance. So really utilizing our knowledge of how to run your insurance program. Again, we're not developers, but we're really good at managing risk and strategizing the structure of your insurance program.
That's awesome, man. I mean, we're seeing that now. So another shout out. Just thank you for what you're doing. I think,
You guys are making me blush.
I think one kind of as we transition into this next conversation, you see a lot of different groups, right? Whether it's development groups that are building homes, or they're building offices, or they're building, flex warehouse. You then have a lot of clients that are sponsor groups that are buying existing assets across the gamut. One question Henry and I wanted to ask was like, in working with these different customers and these different groups, like in 2025, what is it that they're doing, either from a decision making standpoint or hiring the right people or culture in general? Like what are they doing differently that's enabling those groups to kind of create a gap and really take advantage of this volatile time? Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. No, and I'm so glad you asked me because, I do have a unique aspect in that I see all these different groups and how they operate. And most of the time know the owner or founder or, depending on the size of the group. And I'm dealing with, the project managers or the chief investment officers, asset managers. So I deal with a lot of different people, CFOs amongst these groups. And the common theme for the ones that are the most successful, hold on to their talent and the best place to work is the culture starting from the top down. And I know that's so, that's what everyone says, but the best groups that I work with, they have a leader that is invested in everyone in the company. Everyone feels important. They operate like a family. Honestly, they hardly ever lose their top talent. Everyone feels important, like I mentioned, and they empower their employees to do the right thing. And when they make mistakes, obviously they learn from them, but they empower their employees. They have amazing culture, and they're led by a great leader that makes it feel like a big family. That is the common thing amongst almost all of the most successful groups that I work with.
It's such a
Which
cool
I know you guys have an awesome leader. Like you guys have both spoke so highly of Christian, and how great of a leader and culture guy he is. So it's awesome for you guys.
Yeah, we have they had like the 50-page culture book back at Fox.
Yeah, that's what I hear. That's
We get
awesome.
in and like the very first interview they lay that down. I think it's just a really unique. It's not really, I mean, you could have probably gone a lot of different directions with that of it's the guys who just get after it the most. It's whoever's wanting to put the most hours in, right? But at the end of the day, it's you're not going anywhere if you can't keep people on the ship going with you.
Totally. I think you're right. It's those groups that keep the best talent. They keep them there. And it's not because they're going to make, they could probably go make more money elsewhere, but they keep them because of the culture and because they feel like they're family. And that is by far the common theme.
We have to shout out our wonderful coach Calhoun at Utah State right now. College sports is in a different world. This is a little bit of a tangent here, but all these athletes getting paid, and it's his whole culture is listen, if you're here to get the most money that you can make, this isn't probably the place for you, right?
Really.
But if you're here to really buy into the community, buy into everything else, like this is the place for you and it's going to have a lasting impact. And so I'm interested, like, what did you see? I mean, you worked with Buckner before, right? And then you made this
Mhm.
transition to Locked In.
Yeah.
What did you see in Locked In that kind of keeps you there, right? Because I'm sure it's got to be something like if you said it, it's probably speaking to that. But what keeps you at Locked In and gives you hope for the future there?
Yeah, just the opportunity to do more for our clients and with the resources we have here within the real estate development vertical was the most attractive thing. What keeps me happy here, knowing that I can chase any size development firm while still writing some of the more boutique ones, uh, and the resources and services we can offer them, and then just giving me the autonomy to do my thing, and I'm not micromanaged. It's a great culture, been a great fit so far.
That's sweet. That's awesome. I think, as you think about the next 5 to 10 years of your career. But what are you kind of hoping to accomplish? And do you foresee yourself staying a producer in the insurance space, or is there a desire to maybe start developing and taking all this learning, or starting your own sponsor group or something like that? Like, what are your aspirations as a professional over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I'm those that can develop sell insurance to developers, that's that's how they say it. No, I love what I do. For the next 30 years, I'm going to be doing this, um, selling insurance to real estate firms. I don't see myself leaving. I'm not smart enough to go be a developer or go buy apartments like you guys. So I'm going to be in this space doing the same thing for the long term. 100% bought in at Locked In and doing what I'm doing. Um, Love it too much, and it's been just a great opportunity. I'm happy. So yeah, I don't foresee myself doing it. Maybe I'll invest $2 in one of your guys' deal, but not definitely not getting into real estate anytime soon.
It's not going to come from like a lack of IQ, that's for sure, Tanner. Like you're a smart guy, you're a personable guy, like that. And it's cool to hear. Like you found what you want to do. I think
Yeah,
for there's like hopefully, well, I mean, we don't even know who's going to listen to this, right? Hopefully people end up listening to it and get something out of it.
you guys are the Joe Rogan of real estate podcast.
But we love, yeah, we're Pat McAfee, take our shirts off and have a good time. We I think the big thing, like I'd hope like a lot of young people would listen to this, right? And advice for, I mean, somebody who is in college, like this 18, 19, or just coming out of college at 2021, um, any advice you'd have for them of getting into insurance? We kind of talked about what the day in the life looks like a little bit, but I think a big mistake I've had in my career previously, shout out all of my old employers besides maybe one, but um, they, I think I didn't know what questions I should ask the group that I was joining, and then it kind of came out like 6 months later or something like that, you know? And so anybody that's wanting to get into insurance, like what questions do you think they should be asking? And if they have the opportunity to say interview at a group, like what should they be looking at in a firm to really implement success into their life, into their practice?
Yeah, I would say for just the first question, for those that are thinking about getting into insurance, I mentioned the positives and kind of what drew me to the business, but are you willing to play the long game to develop those relationships? Do you want to be in a relationship focused business working with, whatever vertical you go into, a real estate, manufacturing, construction, but are you dedicated to that long play? Because if you want to be successful, you don't do it overnight in insurance. That's why I mentioned, BG and Henry. I'm in this for the long run. I've committed to this career. I'm doing it forever. And so you got to really be 1000% bought in if you want to produce. The service side's different, but if you want to produce, you have to be bought in from day one, long term. And then questions they should be asking, looking at different firms to join within insurance, is really just the direction of the firm. Private equity has taken over our business. And so a lot of people, I'm lucky enough that Locked In's still a family owned company and plans to be 100% privately owned for the next 100+ years. They have a very long succession plan in place. But private equity, like I mentioned, has taken over this business. And so understanding the firm you're going to work for, what their direction is, do they want to sell in 5 years? Are they already controlled by private equity? What's going to happen? Because these long seasoned producers or new producers, they work for a company, the company's acquired, they hate it, they have built up a book of business there, they slash commissions, etc. So I think over anything is understanding what the direction of the company is going to be, because your world can change once you have a new owner, whether it's, you go public or you are purchased by private equity. It changes everything. Not to say those are bad places to work. There's a lot of publicly traded insurance brokerages and private equity backed firms that people love to work at. But if you're used to something and then 2 years later it flips, or 10 years later it changes, you have a built up book of business. So it's really hard to leave. So you want to be bought into the place that you're going to go work.
Yeah, shout out Locked In.
Shout out Locked In.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
by
dude,
the way, Did you guys watch that movie or the show Severance on Apple TV?
No, everyone keeps talking about it. What
Okay,
makes it so special?
I don't know if anything. It's a great show, but they stole our logo. The name of
Oh,
the name of the company in the show's Lumen. They totally stole our logo. It's the same logo. It just says Lumen instead of Lockton. So yeah,
That would know that.
crazy, man.
I'm just gonna call them.
Forget Severance, man.
Well, dude, we've really appreciated the opportunity. I've learned a ton, and you're just a great friend, man. We wish you the
You
best
guys,
success, and we'd love to get on the golf course soon, and
let's
we'll
do
be
it.
in touch, obviously. But thank you so much for this time, and Henry, unless you have any more questions, man, I think we let Tanner get back to his
I,
family and enjoy the
I'm
weekend.
I'm I'm gonna
I
tell
want
a
to hear
story.
Tanner's BG story
Yeah, I'm
before.
gonna tell the
Okay,
beach story.
okay.
I
Yeah,
have to tell this
I was
story. I
trying
have to
to.
tell it.
Okay,
yeah, we're
okay,
not
I've
getting
told this
off the
story too
subject
many
yet.
times. Okay,
okay.
so we're up at Utah State. BG is the man on campus. He's got the girlfriend. He's hitting every three. He's on Sports Illustrated, the March Madness edition. Life could not be better for BG. He ran the campus. Okay, I don't care what he says. So there was this guy that was in my dorm that he was just different. I don't want to talk. He was just a little different. Wouldn't be considered a popular kid or whatever. His name was. I'll leave his name out. But so I'm coming back to the dorms. BG's there hanging out with him, and the guy goes back in his room, and I go, Ryan, what are you doing? Do you guys have like a school project? What are you doing? He's like, no, we're just hanging out. I'm like, you're hanging out with him? I was so confused. I'm first of all, I'm like, how do you even know who he is? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, how come you're hanging out with him? Is he, I'm thinking he's like a cousin or something. And BG just goes, guys like that need friends. And I'm like, man, made me feel this small. The man most popular guy on campus is hanging out with this nerd kid that had no friends. So, dude, you're the man.
BG is
Thanks,
the
man.
man, dude.
He
Thanks,
really
man.
is.
No,
Yeah.
God's been good to all of us, and I think I appreciate that. I don't know what else to say other than I God's been good, and I think it's important to just try to be humble and try to be a good human. So
But you
I
are. You
remember,
both.
dude. I think I met that cat. I think he was at the TSC, or I can't remember, but he was really into like Jimi Hendrix, and I think he
Yeah.
played the guitar, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just I'm attracted to people that are different, man. I just try to surround myself with like lots of different people. I don't know, but I appreciate you sharing that. And Tanner, you've been awesome, man. We love you. We wish you success, and we appreciate this time spent on a Friday afternoon. And good luck, and have a wonderful weekend, man.
Hey, any LPs out there, invest your money with Wind River Group. They're the best. I love you guys. You're the best. Have a great weekend.
You
All
too. We'll
right,
see you,
peace.
man.
Okay, see you guys.